This is the Brand South Africa, CNBC Africa CEO networking session. And we've borrowed a formula from Davos, the World Economic Forum in Davos, which is a little unusual. It's not your traditional panel discussion. Instead, it is a working delegation. And Brand South Africa has given us their assurance that the working paper that we derive from this forum will, of course, go back to the respective policymakers, and we will start seeing implementation. This is the third of a series of 3. We've been in Lagos, we've been in Nairobi, and now we're extremely excited to bring the series to Kampala. As you will know, the intra-Africa trade stat remains very, very low. And depending on what metric you use, it stands between 10 to 14%. Now, we need to kick up intra-Africa trade. We know this because it is one way to insulate us from global shocks elsewhere in the world. So what are those barriers and what are the opportunities that we can unlock very quickly? We've got to understand that we are competing not only with different African countries for foreign direct investment, but we are competing in a global space. And capital flows where capital is welcome. Free movement of goods, services, and people has to be a priority for the African continent if we are going to facilitate ease of trade between different countries.
I have looked at Uganda that we are doing a lot of business with countries outside of Africa than countries in Africa. Until the last 5 years, we are doing a lot with Kenya, we are doing a lot with COMESA. Almost half of our exports now are going in Africa. But the other half is going to the EU, primary products, is going to United Arab Emirates, is going to China, is going to Japan, is going to Indonesia, and these other places. Yet these same products we produce, they can be consumed within Africa. Why are we not consuming them? Connectivity is a challenge. Infrastructure has to be addressed. Tell your leaders and our leaders that we need infrastructure and connectivity. Movement of capital is a bit difficult. UIA is telling you that again, and Amos Wekesa, that again we cannot easily move capital and people between Uganda and South Africa. And almost the last one is the issue of the importance of regional integration, of integrating Africa. Integrating Africa to become one market, to become one zone, to become one economic zone, to become one trade area. Let's begin talking about internal trade within Africa. Let's not talk about, I shouldn't be saying I'm exporting to South Africa, neither should South Africa be exporting to Uganda. This should be internal trade. Goods come from California, they are going to Columbus, Ohio. That is not exporting. It is important we look at it that way.
There are a number of, from the investment perspective, there are a number of areas where we could benefit, where South Africa is already one of the global players, areas of ICT, agro-processing. We have a nascent minerals sector where I think South Africa is very strong. We could pick from that, a number of investments in that. We're already working with them on the infrastructure, especially energy. So that one, at least, we have a relationship. But there are a number of other things, manufacturing, farming, even in this, whatever. I think we don't have any big farmers to talk about, really.
So this goes to a theme that we've seen also across the continent, taking best practice from different territories and being able to deploy those examples in other territories.
I think every country must put in place their security system such that if wrong guys move from one country to another, it is sorted out. A good example now is Rwanda. Every African country, anybody coming from Africa into Rwanda is able to get a visa at the airport. Now, if Africa is to grow, that's one of the moves. There's a lot of people growing wealthy. Yes, there are people who are poor, but the truth is that the only way for us to succeed, there must be enough intra-Africa business. Now, the other one is open skies. How do you fly from Entebbe 45 minutes to Nairobi and pay $500? It just doesn't make sense. I have flown from Amsterdam to Madrid, which is 2.5 hours. I have paid $70. Those guys are able to do better business than we shall ever do here. Now, where is the problem? First of all, for Nairobi, for Kenya Airways to land into Entebbe, every ticket you pay $50 in Entebbe, and you pay another $50, 57 in Uganda, $50 in Nairobi. Before the airline gets the money, $107 is on ground handling. Africans must make sure that there are no landing fees within Africa, because we are simply blocking ourselves.
Yeah. Open skies, you've got a thumbs up from our side. I want to understand now, what are those solutions that you would like to see Brand South Africa taking back to South Africa, as they have promised to do, and having them put before the right bodies from a policy perspective, from a business working group perspective, so that we can make steps forward between our two countries and in the broader theme of intra-Africa trade.
Consider long-term visas for certain categories of people. The other thing was about information that is given. Actually, we realized that there could be a lot more information that is not available to the travelers. So how is that information shared or disseminated to the people who may want to move or apply for visas between these two countries?
We deliberated and we felt that it's very important as a solution to first do a stock take. We need to find out, where is the South Africa-Uganda relations? What is the status of that relations? Which agreements between the two countries exist? What protocols are there? What laws? What, common groupings? Is Uganda and South Africa having a common grouping? And currently there is none anyway, because Uganda is in COMESA and EAC, South Africa is in SADC. So do we need to do something around that? Do we have to have a common grouping? We are seeing the EAC, SADC, COMESA free trade area coming up. Is that something that will help improve the relations? Once we've known the status and taken a stock take, it's important to implement the existing agreements. Let South Africa try to brand Uganda and tell them about the good that is in Uganda, which connections, what opportunities, what attractions exist in Uganda. And if someone comes to Uganda, let them know what is good. Let's co-brand between the two countries.
If I can just pause there, because I want to again highlight commonalities that were uncovered in the other discussions. And this data, the sharing of data between countries, has to take center stage. In an electronic age, in a digital age, there is no reason for us not to have all that information in central repositories that's easily accessible between countries. Thank you.
This exchange culture via sports is very, very important. Soccer, rugby, and other cricket and the rest. And this will improve a lot. The relationships is very, very important. Tourism, you have more Ugandans going to South Africa compared to how many South Africans come to Uganda. And these South Africans go to the EU, to Europe, to USA. And what do you see in USA and Europe? Uganda has richer tourism. Uganda has no winter, no summer, no fall, no spring like in South Africa. We have the best weather in the world because we are astride the equator. We are both on the North Pole and the South Pole at the same time. And that place, one can come from South Africa and stand exactly there and see that.
We realized that many times when South African companies come to Uganda, there is limited skills within Uganda. But then how do you address that? As long as you have one-way flow, then that business is not going to grow. And one of the ways of doing that is doing exchange programs. Deliberate doing exchange programs. You've set a business, yes, you have limited skills, yes, but you deliberately exchange and skill people so that with time, and that comes with succession planning, though I understand it also comes with its own other challenges. But it is worth, trying out to say, we can do succession planning, when we say, yes, there are these positions when we are starting, but over time, we want to localize some of these other positions. so that people can
I
feel.
add to that? Because I think that this is a great takeaway. Now imagine if we start an exchange program between Brand South Africa and the Ugandan Investment Authority, or Brand Uganda, I don't know which the right body would be, and also between the television channels. So right here, you know, CNBC Africa, Roberta Naika as managing director, and universities. So there we go. This is a step forward from those Kenya discussions where now with Uganda, South Africa, we've got the parties in this room to start those exchange programs between the entities. Thank you, that's brilliant.
On the Ugandan side, we've done very little in terms of promoting what we do best. And we also, I think we need to also get peer-to-peer discussions going between Ugandans and South African business people. And we also need to start to encourage some form of partnerships and JVs. I think he alluded to the point that many times when a South African company comes, it takes over, and you know, so the Ugandan business is sold to a South African company. But there's value in us partnering, and that would also help in building capacity, both sides.
The future of the continent depends on greater understanding and partnerships between countries like Uganda and South Africa, according to Brand South Africa's Petrus de Kock.
Development in Uganda, development in the DRC or in Zambia of local business and capacitating them to ultimately be able to cross borders. That should be one of our first objectives in peer-to-peer learning and in partnership. We can probably do much more to facilitate the flow of information between national investment authorities at a national level, but then to ensure that, like Trade Invest Africa in the Department of Trade and Industry in South Africa, is empowered by information from the Ugandan Investment Authority, for example, to share directly to South African business chambers and businesses. This continent has everything we need in natural resources, in people, etc. So we really need to look to each other for survival and for the future.